Hello, this is the Supply and Demand Section B lecture. Our prioritized standard is Economic Standard 10. Objectively, we're going to analyze how determinants of demand and supply impact price and quantity. So, at times, a market will experience increases or decreases of quantity, meaning the amount people want, that are not actually caused by changes in the price charged for the product, but rather due to a change of the overall demand or supply. When there is a change in demand or supply, it is actually called a shift, which is the movement of either the entire demand curve or the entire supply curve. A shift of demand represents a change in consumers' overall willingness to purchase an item, even when its selling price does not change. So if we're talking about a shift of demand, then basically that translates to we have the demand actually picks up and moves to another location. That's what we mean by a shift of it. It can shift this direction. It could also shift in this direction. A shift of supply represents a change in producer's overall ability or willingness to produce an item, even when its selling price does not change. So for instance, if we had a shift of our supply, that basically means the entire supply curve actually picks up and moves to another location. So picks up and moves to another location. It can shift that direction. It could also shift this direction. Again, it can only shift right or left. It doesn't shift up and down. We'll talk about why we don't want to use the terms up and down a little bit later. A shift of either the demand or supply will result in a change of both the equilibrium price and quantity of an item. Shifts of demand are caused only by determinants of demand, which are things that cause the demand for a good or a service to change. Now, I should point out, changing prices do not cause entire demand curves to shift. Now, just because, let's say, cigarettes are on sale does not translate to a lot of people in mass that never smoked before are going to be like, you know what I'm going to do today? I'm going to start smoking. It's like, it's just so cheap. It's like, I don't care if it's addictive. I'm going to start smoking today because it's so darn cheap. That does not cause demand curves to change. Only the following determinants of demand will cause demand curves to shift. Things like changes in income. So if we have like a Lamborghini Diablo, generally speaking, you're not going to purchase that unless you have the money to purchase that. So if you make a lot more money, you're going to be more likely to buy those products. Also, changes in consumer taste and preferences. So, let's say you watch a documentary about how cheese is made and now you're freaked out about cheese. That might affect people's willingness to go purchase cheese. Also, changes in prices of substitute goods. Now, substitute goods are goods that can be used to replace other goods. So, let's say you're thinking about getting a Big Mac, but Whoppers are on sale. Well, you might actually not buy Big Mac now because, well, Whoppers are on sale. I'm going to go buy that item instead. So that can actually cause your demand to shift. Also, changes in prices of complementary goods. Complementary goods, instead, are goods commonly used with another good. So let's say you're thinking about where to get a hamburger today. One store has French fries on sale or free French fries with a burger, something to that effect. That's going to probably affect some people and want them to go to one place over another because of that. Also, changes in market size. Markets that are growing in size usually will have more demand. Markets that are shrinking in size usually will have less demand. And also changes in consumer expectations. Sometimes consumers expect something will happen, and because of that expectation, they might behave differently. Now, I should point out, not everyone is affected the same by all of these. Again, we're not talking about all people. We're talking about most people and trends of people. A shift to the right of demand denotes an increase of demand. So again, shift to the right. So we find our demand curve. Now we go to the right of it. And by that happening, that denotes an increase of our demand. So therefore, consumers will buy larger quantities even if prices do not lower. So again, we want to make an increase of demand. We find the demand curve, go to the bottom of it, go to the right-hand side of it, and make another demand curve. We notice I named this something different, so that way I can tell the difference between this demand curve and the other demand curve. And the straight line down tells us our quantity. Now this results in an increased equilibrium price and an increased equilibrium quantity. So on our demand curve, when we start, supply, demand, dotted lines out. I also have a P star and a Q star so that I can denote where my equilibrium price was to begin with. And the dotted lines, the entire purpose of the dotted lines is just so I know where my starting point is. All right, so if I'm trying to denote a shift to the right, again, I go to the right, I find the demand curve, go to the right-hand side of it, and then I just make another demand curve. It doesn't matter how close it is to the other one as long as it's just on the right-hand side. And then I name it something else so I know that it is a different demand curve. Now I have to find my new equilibrium price. Where do I find it? X marks the spot. That's right, X marks the spot. So that tells us that's where our new demand curve is. We go straight across, and that is our new price. I'll call this P1 so that it matches my D1. Then I'll go straight down. I'll call this Q1 so that way it matches my D1. And as we'll see at this point, this was our starting point. By shifting to the right, prices will increase for this product. Also, the amount of the product that people are purchasing will also increase. A shift to the left of demand denotes a decrease of demand. So again, we find our demand curve, go to the bottom of it, we go on the left-hand side of it and make a new demand curve. Where at? Doesn't matter, as long as it's on the left-hand side and it's a demand curve. Consumers will buy smaller quantities even if prices do not raise. So again, our price, quantity, magic. Now, shift to the left results in a decreased equilibrium price and a decreased equilibrium quantity. So if I'm trying to denote, again, the left shift of demand, first you have to make your original one, supply, demand, X marks the spot, P star, Q star. So if I want to denote a shift to the left of demand, I just find my demand curve. I go on the bottom of it and then the left-hand side of it, and then just make a new demand curve. It doesn't matter where, it doesn't matter how pretty, it's just somewhere on the left-hand side of it. Where's my new equilibrium price? X marks the spot. So once we have denoted where X marks the spot, take that straight out to the price. That is my new price point, P1 to match my D1, and down is Q1 to match my D1. So that shows me that because of the left shift of demand, our prices will drop and the amount of the product will also drop. Shifts of supply are caused only by determinants of supply, which are things that cause the supply for a good or a service to change. Now, I should point out, consumers wanting more or less of a product actually has zero impact at all on a producer's ability to make a product. Now, consumers wanting a product, I'll let you in a little secret. If consumers didn't want the product, they wouldn't make the product in the first place. So that has nothing to do with a producer's ability to make a product. Only the following determinants of demand will cause the supply curve to shift. Things like changes in prices of production inputs. So if you're making cigarettes and the price of tobacco is now more expensive, well, it's going to be harder to make cigarettes with no tobacco. So that would affect your ability to actually produce this product. Also, changes in labor productivity. If you have a labor force that is more productive or less productive, you'll be able to make either more or less of the product depending on what happens to their productivity. Also, changes in government tools affecting production. So if the government is having things like taxes or subsidies or types of regulations, that can actually affect a producer's ability to actually make that product. Also, changes in technology used in production. So not just technology overall, but technology that helps you produce that can actually have an impact. Usually it'll have a positive impact the more technology you have. Also, changes in number of producers. So if more businesses are producing a product, then you're usually going to see more of the product being produced. Less producers producing the product, you're usually going to see less of the product being produced. And also producers sometimes changes in producer expectations. If they expect something to happen to supply, they might start behaving in a fashion that might cause that to happen, even though it might not normally have happened in the first place. A shift to the right of supply denotes an increase of supply. Note, I did not say it goes up. So when we're talking about an increase of supply, first off, you have to find your supply curve. Now you go on the right-hand side of it and make your new. That denotes an increase of our supply, and at this price, more people want it. Note, I did not make it go up. If I would have had it go up, that would not show us an increase. So when we want to show an increase of supply again, find the supply curve, go to the bottom of it, go on the right-hand side, make a new one. Supply has now increased. Producers will sell larger quantities even if prices do not raise. This will cause a decreased equilibrium price and an increased equilibrium quantity. So again, if I'm trying to denote what's happened to my equilibrium points, first you got to make your original. Demand, supply, X marks the spot, equilibrium P star, Q star. Again, I do the dotted line so I know where my starting points are. All right, so if I'm trying to denote an increase of my supply, I don't go up. Remember, I find my supply curve, go to the bottom of it, and then I go to the right-hand side of it. Doesn't really matter what I make it, how close it is, as long as it's on the right-hand side. I'm going to name it something else so I know it's a different supply curve. Now, where do I find my new equilibrium price? X marks the spot. That's right, X marks the spot. So once I have found where X marks the spot, bring that straight line across, P1, so it matches my S1, and Q1, again, to match my S1. So this shows me that by shifting to the right, we're going to have drop in price. And even though there's a drop in price, producers are still going to be selling more of that product. A shift to the left of supply actually denotes a decrease of supply. So if we're trying to illustrate less supply, don't say it goes down. It does not go down. So first, again, you find your supply curve, go to the bottom of it, and then you go on the left-hand side of it, and then just make a new supply curve. Doesn't matter how close it is to it, as long as it's to the left of it. It'll show what it needs to show. So again, shift to the left of supply denotes a decrease of supply. Again, left, not down. Left will show a decrease. Producers will sell smaller quantities even if prices do not lower at this point. And again, a shift to the left of supply denotes a decrease of supply and will cause an increased equilibrium price and a decreased equilibrium quantity. So again, if I'm trying to show a shift to the left of supply, first you got to make your original supply demand curve. X marks the spot, your dotted lines, P star, Q star. After you've done that, then if you want to denote a decrease of your supply, again, it doesn't go down, it goes left. So find your supply curve. It's the one that's labeled S. Go to the left-hand side of it and just make a new supply curve. Doesn't matter how pretty it is, as long as it's to the left of it, it's going to show what we needed to show. Where's my new equilibrium? X marks the spot. That's right, X marks the spot. So we draw a straight line across. That becomes our new price, or P1. And straight down, Q1. So again, those matches my S1s. So this shows me that by shifting to the left, we'll notice that prices will actually start to increase. And the quantity will decrease. All right, this concludes Supply and Demand Section B lecture. Our prioritized standard is Economic Standard 10. And objectively now you can analyze how determinants of demand and supply impact price and quantity.